Hi, my name is Rich Harrington, and welcome to another edition of Understanding Adobe Photoshop. Today, we're going to go ahead and do some highlight recovery on some raw photos. The great thing about shooting raw is it gives you greater latitude with your exposure, and we can use this to our advantage to go ahead and post-process our images, taking care of challenging exposure situations. Additionally, we can reuse the settings from one image on another. Let's learn how. So I've got some images here that were shot in a very low light situation inside of a bunker here. And let's go ahead and double click. We'll actually select 3 images here. First, we'll go ahead and get those 3 selected, and then we'll open these. I'll press return. Now it opens up into the Camera Raw dialog box, and you see that all 3 images are actually loaded here. What I want to do is process this first one. Now by default, these preview highlights aren't going to be turned on. But you can turn these to warn you about clipping. So if we click this, we see that some of these bright areas are overexposed and are clipping. Additionally, if we turn this blue dot on, we'll see if any shadow areas are being clipped, which does not appear too much, except in this very top ridge here. Now, let's go ahead and make a few adjustments. We'll go ahead here and play with the white balance first off. We could try auto. We can use the fact that we're in the shade, or we can go back to how it was shot, which we'll use what the camera read in. And that works pretty well. We'll just manually play with the temperature a little bit to warm that up. Next, let's click Auto for our exposure and recovery. And notice it opens up the image quite a bit. It's a little bit more than I want, so I'm going to take the brightness down here. And what we need to do is recover these blown out highlights. One of the easiest ways to do that is with the recovery slider. So as we drag to the right here, you'll see that those start to go away. Now, at some point, they will become unrecoverable because there'll just be too much information lost. And you may have to let some of that go. So let's back that off a bit and take the exposure down just a little. And that looks pretty good. There we go. Now, if we go all the way until it's gone, our picture may start to get too dark. And that's where we could try putting a little bit of fill light back in and play with that exposure. We are going to just have to let some of that area blow out, but that seems to be a pretty good balance there of keeping the people properly exposed without blowing out the background. I'll go ahead and put a little bit of vibrance back in there to saturate the areas that need it, and notice how the skin tones and the floor really become much richer. And that's doing a nice job. Now, if you want to see the before and after, just click the preview button and you can toggle it off and on and get an idea of what's happening. I like what's going on there, but I'm going to put a little bit of richness back into the blacks to make his clothing a little bit richer and to have those shadows really pop. Let's back the brightness down just a tad and a little bit more on the fill light, and we'll toggle the preview there. And that's working nicely. I think I like where we've taken that image. Now, we can actually take that setting and apply it. I can go ahead now and select all the images and click the Synchronize button and actually take the settings from the first image and apply it to the rest. So we could specify which settings we want or just take all of them by clicking OK. And now when we check each image, you'll see that they're similar. So there's our first one. That's looking pretty good. Let's go to our next image here. It needs a little bit of tweak. We'll open the exposure up just a tad. And let's go ahead, pull the blacks down a bit. And a little more fill. Good. Go to our last image here, and we'll see that our back area is really overblown. So let's take recovery a little bit further. Open up exposure. And we'll need to lower the blacks so they don't clip out as much. And that's because they've gotten further into the frame here where the doorway opened up. Now let's step through. Those are looking pretty good. There we go. And we do have some warnings, but nothing that I'm not willing to sacrifice. When we're all set here, shift-click for all of them and say Open Objects, and it will send them into Photoshop, into the document, so we can work with them. There we go. All 3 objects are open in Photoshop, so it took the raw images and opened them up. Remember too, these are smart objects now. So if you need to modify it, a quick double click on the smart object icon will re-invoke the Camera Raw dialog box. where you can make a few tweaks as needed. For example, we could dial down exposure a bit, flip on over here, and let's just go to our grayscale here, put a little bit more into the reds, and toss on a quick, strong contrast curve. And notice how we can quickly make a few changes here. That looks nice. A little more saturation. And click OK. And in doing so, the smart object will automatically update to show those new results. So, hopefully you get an idea on how to use those smart objects quickly and efficiently, and of course, recover those blown out areas that can be problematic. For Understanding Adobe Photoshop, I'm your host, Rich Harrington. Be sure to check out our resource blog at rastervector.com because something big is coming and you're going to want to find out about it. Thanks again.